So Mazel Tov to all of us. Baruch Hashem, we reached the goal. We saw the beautiful results from teamwork. That's all that it was. Everybody working together. And Baruch Hashem, you students had a big part of it. And couldn't have without you, so thank you, everybody. Okay, now we'll have supper and lunch in school. From now on, we'll have food. Okay, so we started Ois Tes in the Mamar Veata Tetzaveh, Tov Shin Mem Aleph. The Rebbe gave this kuntus in Tov Shin Mem Beis, Purim Cotton, and we're learning the Sefer lessons in Sefer Mamar. So basically, was the idea of kasis, which means kasis lamar means that when there are many levels in the depth and layers of depth of the neshama, specifically regarding Emunah, there's these two levels in Emunah. One level in Emunah, which is because the neshama sees, and the other level in Emunah because the neshama is one with Hashem. And when Yidden are kasis, which means when they're crushed, when they're being challenged, when they're being oppressed, what really happens, it brings out the depth of their neshama, and that's how it brings them to have Mesiras Nefesh. So according to this, the story of Purim, when it says that the Yidden rededicated themselves to receive the Torah, which means they began doing it when they went out of Mitzrayim by Har Sinai, but it wasn't complete. When was it complete? In the times of Purim, because then they had Mesiras Nefesh. So that means that we're saying the deeper level of dedication, the deeper level of connection to Hashem came when? During the time of the decree, because they were being oppressed, they were being crushed. But if you look in the Mefarshim and the Purim, on the simple pshat, it seems that it's not like that. That when did they rededicate themselves to Torah in a way which was new and different and better than before? And it was after the miracle. Hashem performed the miracle. They were all so excited and so happy and rejoicing and celebrating the miracle that they rededicated themselves to Torah. So therefore, the Rebbe introduces now a new idea that actually both are true. There was a deeper dedication to Torah during the time of the decree because they were crushed, and that brought out the essence of the neshama. And there was also a deeper dedication to Torah and mitzvahs after the miracle, also because they were crushed. But why were they crushed? It was a miracle. They just saw a miracle, and they saw all the enemies of the Yidden were defeated, and the Yidden were saved. So this is what he's going to explain now. Let's start on page 380. Ishleimar. Regarding these words, kosis amor, again, literally it means you crush the olive to use it for the menorah, for the luminary. But the deeper meaning is kosis, that when the neshama, when the person is being crushed and oppressed, lamor brings out a deeper light, would be shining. The shnei inyanim was that there are two different inyanim. One is Kishisrael nimtzayim b'masav shel kosis, when Yidden are crushed because of Yeshtam Gzeres Akim Ater Mitzvahs, because there are decrees against the observance of Torah mitzvahs. Page 381. When the previous Rebbe said this Maimer, the one that the previous Rebbe said in 1927, That was the time where Yidden were not allowed to teach Torah publicly and to spread Torah mitzvahs publicly, and therefore it was a time where they were being crushed. They couldn't live as Jews the way they wanted to, and that brought to Mesiras Nefesh. And the same as in the time of Purim, Yidden were being crushed. They said that if you're a Yid, then Haman is going to wipe them out, and he didn't want them to do Torah mitzvahs. So the same thing happened then. This brings out the luminary in the soul. Remember the difference between luminary and light. Light is the manifestation of the luminary. The luminary is the source, like the sun itself is the luminary, and the sunlight, which spreads over millions of miles, that's the light. So the neshama, the essence of the soul, is the luminary, and what we experience consciously, thought, speech, action, feelings, intellect, emotion, all that is the light. So when we are oppressed, the essence of the neshama is revealed, Mesiras Nefesh. But now there's another way of understanding it. Because there's another dimension to understand crushed. And where crushed brings out the luminary, it goes like this. Even in a time where you're not living in a situation where they have prosperity, which means prosperity begashmi, thank God, they have food, they have clothing, they have a home, they live freely, and they also have prosperity spiritually, which means no one is oppressing them. No one is blocking them. No one is interfering with their Torah mitzvahs. They have all the doors are open. Do whatever you want. But nimtzaim begolus, they were still in golus. In other words, imagine the scenario, which is similar to the way we live in America and most free countries today, that we have harchava, we have prosperity begashmis, which means people could take any job, they can study in any school. There's no doors that are closed because you're Jewish, you have no right to do this, or you can't go here, or you can't go there. These things don't exist anymore. So we have the total freedom of Gashmis. And of course, freedom of Ruchnius. This is no longer a government that makes decrees that Jews can't do Bris Milah, they can't do Shabbos, they can't do Kashrus, they can't do this or can't do that. No, everything, whatever you want to do, if this is your religion, you have the freedom to do it, and no one, actually people will be punished if they try to interfere with you. So we have freedom in everything. To a certain extent, this was the situation, this is the kind of situation you didn't live in after the miracle of Purim. Haman was finished, the decrees were over, and what does it say about that time? The Jewish people enjoyed light, joy, gladness, and honor. The literal meaning and the spiritual meaning. The Gemara says that every one of the 4 words also alludes to something spiritual. Eira means now they can study Torah freely. Simcha means now they can observe the Yom Tovim freely. Sasin meant that they're able to observe Bris Milah freely. And Yikar is Tefillin. In other words, these are mitzvahs that no longer, no one was getting and stopping them. So that means that the Yidden had light and joy and gladness and honor physically and spiritually. Another thing, it says in the Megillah that Haman's house was given away to Esther. What's so significant about that? The answer is in Chassidus, we know that the greatest accomplishment is not just to get rid of something which is negative, but when you can transform something negative into positive, when you can transform darkness into light. This was the house of Haman. This was the source, that this source generated all that evil that was going on in that generation. They took that very same house and they transformed it into a house that belongs to tzaddikas like Esther. Interesting, it reminds me of what happened during the Persian Gulf War. So the Persian Gulf War was a war against a person called Saddam Hussein in Iraq. that was probably the biggest anti-Semite in the world, and he was bent on destroying God for Israel. He claimed that he is a descendant, and not a descendant, he's a reincarnation of the Nebuchadnezzar, who destroyed the first Beis Hamikdash, and he has to finish the job. And that was his dream. And there's so many things about how he implemented that in his army, in his palace. So Baruch Hashem, there was miracles upon miracles. And eventually he was had to run away from his palace. This happened on Purim. That was the day that the war ended. Pesach, there were hundreds of soldiers that were Jewish that wanted to have a Seder. What do you think they made the Seder in? His palace. So this palace, this place, which is the source of all that evil, was transformed into, it became a place to accommodate davening and learning and making a Seder and so on. So in other words, okay, it was a time that was, there was a time that was good and plenty, I would say. But one thing, we were still servants of Achashverosh. Our king at that time was Achashverosh. It wasn't Eretz Yisrael. It wasn't the Jewish king. It was Achashverosh who was the king. So the Gemara says that, therefore, even though the miracle and the decrees were over, but we were still in Galus. Later, 3 years later, they built the Beis Hamikdash. They went to Eretz Yisrael, but at that time they had good and plenty physically, spiritually, but they were still in Galus. So even though they have all this good, but they're nevertheless broken and totally crushed from the mere fact that we're in Galus. They have crushed these and through the fact that we're crushed from being in Galus, Magi Lamar, this also brings out the essence of the neshama. So in other words, here we're being introduced to something new. Normally, we explain the word crushed means being oppressed, that there are forces that are aggressively fighting our observance of Torah mitzvahs, not letting me live as a Jew. Here we're saying, even if all that is gone, just the mere fact that we don't have a Beis Hamikdash, and we're in Galus, and we'll soon talk about what defines the word Galus, that alone makes me crushed to the core, and therefore that also will bring out the essence of the neshama. Later in the Mamar, the Rebbe is going to mention that we see an interesting thing. People, let's say, who lived in Russia, the things that they did when they lived in Russia under communism were absolutely incredible. They had Mesiras Nefesh for every little thing. Everything they did, let's say they wanted to teach children. What did they do? They had to go down to a basement somewhere in a cellar, hide in a place where nobody knows, make sure no one's following them where they're going. And they knew if, God forbid, they were caught teaching these children, they could be executed, sent off to Siberia. Unfortunately, it happened to quite a few of those teachers. And interesting, the teacher taught, got caught, was sent off to Siberia, and the next day someone came in to fill his place, even though he knew what happened to the guy yesterday. So they had Mesiras Nefesh. What should happen when a person like that comes to America, living in a free country? So you think to yourself, if in Russia, with so much opposition and so much oppression, this guy was on fire, when he's going to come to America, the fire will be 3 times as strong. No, when it came to America, a lot of people sort of relaxed, calmed down, became less than what was there before. How does that make sense? So this is the answer, because it's the fact that we're being crushed that brings out the depth, like I said about adrenaline. After the emergency is over, I always tell the story that when I was a young boy, I witnessed a story where there was someone fixing his car, and he had the car lifted up on the jack, and he's changing the tire. His daughter, a little girl, 7, 8, was playing near the car, and part of her leg was under the car, but the car was lifted. Suddenly, the jack snapped. Something happened, and it just broke, and the car fell down on her leg. They ran over, picked up the car with one hand, pulled her out, rushed her to the hospital. She actually needed a cast. When he came back and things calmed down, he said to himself, so I lifted this car with one hand. How did I do that? So he walked over to the car and he huffed and he puffed and he tried to pick it up with two hands and he couldn't. So what was it? This is what we know, adrenaline. But this only happens when there's an emergency. In normal circumstances, the next day when he tried to do it, it didn't work. So this deeper level, this deeper layer of the neshama comes out when we're crushed. So if a person feels crushed from the fact that we're in galus, that even though everything is good and plenty, but that also will bring out the essence of the neshama, because I feel crushed that I'm in galus. Question is why? What am I crushed about? We'll soon see. Linyan who? Okay, so this is the question, and often you get this question. I just had the opportunity to recently speak to a group of high school girls, and this is also the question they asked: if everything is good, thank God, I'm happy, I'm healthy, I have what I need, and my family's happy and healthy, why do I need Mashiach? Or why do I have to be like desperate that Mashiach must come? Okay, one answer is, well, other people are suffering. How could you not want Mashiach? That everybody else should have it good. Okay. But let's say everybody would have it good, like the Rebbe describes here. So why is it so desperate to ask for Mashiach? Why is it such a urgency I must have Mashiach? Why? Because without that, we can't bring the carbon. So that's the end of the world. I can't bring a sacrifice. I can daven, I can learn with depth because I have the freedom and I have nothing that's disturbing me. And I'm having all the pleasure I can from my children, from my family. Parnasa-wise, I have all the money that I need. There's nothing that I'm lacking. Imagine this kind of scenario. Would we still be screaming and shouting, we want Mashiach? And if yes, the question is why? What is the urgency? So the answer is it depends on something very, very, it's a key difference of how we view Yiddishkeit. If we view Yiddishkeit is all about doing certain mitzvahs, that's what it's all about, a certain way of life, which means putting on tefillin and keeping Shabbos and kashrus and shofar and Rosh Hashanah and Pesach, it's mitzvahs, and Shavuos, those mitzvahs. And that's what it is, a yearly cycle of doing mitzvahs, living a certain way. If I can live that way, more or less, I have what I need. But if we understand that Yiddishkeit really is something much deeper, it's all about our relationship with Hashem, which means, like it says in many places, that Yidden and Hashem is like a husband and wife. A husband and wife, that the essence of their relationship is their connection. And the love that they have for each other, and they want to be closer to each other. So they look at all the things that they do, the things that they do together, and the children that they raise together, and everything goes on in the home. All these things are part of bonding with each other. That's what it's all about. That's what it's all about. Torah mitzvahs are 613 ways of how we bond with Hashem. In fact, if you pay attention to what we just learned in Chitas 2-3 days ago, it was in Tanya. The Alter Rebbe in Tanya says that there are 10 commandments, which include the whole Torah, but the first two include everything. What are the first two? The first one is, I am God, your God, who took you out of Mitzrayim. And the second one is, don't worship idols. So the first one is the root of all the positive mitzvahs. And the second one is the root of all the negative, not things that we don't do. Which means all of Torah mitzvahs, one thing is bonding with Hashem, connecting to Hashem, becoming one with Hashem. I mean, just to make it a little bit more real, it would be like if Chas v'Shalom, just to think, it's not Chas v'Shalom, unfortunately it happened that one of the people in Israel, her husband was taken hostage. And we know what that means. We don't even know what it means. We know a little bit what it means. We can't know what it means. And no one should ever know what it means. And if someone would say to her, why are you so upset? Why are you crying? Why are you so broken? Look, thank God there's money. So you have money, you have a car, you have food, you have clothing, you can do whatever you want. You have a house, you don't have to worry about the home. Why are you so broken? What kind of foolish question is that? This person, this is her life, this is her marriage, this is her husband. Look what's going on, and therefore she is broken to pieces. Similarly, if you say that to a Yid, in the same way, what are you so broken? You put on tefillin, you have mezuzahs, you have kashrus, you have taras mishpacha, you have chinuch, you have Pesach, Shavuos, you have all the mitzvahs. But okay, Hashem is hidden from us. So, but that's the essence of what Yiddishkeit is all about. And therefore, if we understand Yiddishkeit properly, we should be broken and crushed just from the fact that we're in Golus. What's the definition of Golus? That Hashem is concealed and hidden from us. We don't see him, we don't feel him, and his presence is distant from us. And that should be the thing that crushes us and breaks us to pieces. That's what the Rebbe is saying here. The real true desire, Rebbe Yid, whether we feel it or not, deep down on neshama, that is the essence of the neshama. Every neshama has this desire, burning desire, sheyiyah gila l'kus, that godliness should be revealed, which means I want to have an open relation with Hashem. I want to feel his presence, and I feel his closeness, and feel his love. Feeling Hashem's love and feeling Hashem's presence and being connected to him is not just another thing in my life, but this is something which is connected to my essence, because my essence and Hashem's essence are one. And therefore, the fact that godliness is hidden, and it's not like it was in the time of the Beis Hamikdash where godliness is revealed. That's number one. And especially the Rebbe says something even more powerful in the parentheses. If a person would stop and think about the words of our sages, what do they say? Kol mish le'nivna Beis Hamikdash b'yamav. Whoever didn't merit that the Beis Hamikdash was built in his days, it's if it was destroyed during his time. In other words, we already sort of inherited this condition. There's no Beis Hamikdash. What about the first generation? When it happened, they were definitely very broken because they felt that they're guilty. If they would have conducted themselves properly, the Beis Hamikdash wouldn't have been destroyed. So, number one, the Beis Hamikdash is destroyed. And number two, I'm responsible for that. It's my fault. Because if I wouldn't have done what I did in those days, let's say, whatever it is that they did, the Beis Hamikdash wouldn't have been destroyed. But we don't have that problem because we're not the ones that made it happen. So Gemara said, take it easy. Every generation that it wasn't built, it's as if it was destroyed, because if you would have merited it, it should have been built now. So again, we're responsible. If a person would stop and think about that we don't have a Beis Hamikdash, again, what does it mean to have a Beis Hamikdash? Not that we're missing a building. It means that Hashem's presence is not revealed. Like the mashal Alter Rebbe gives in Tanya, is the Beis Hamikdash should be like the brain in the human body. So a person, chas v'shalom, something happens to the brain, God forbid, and the person is unconscious, they're alive, they're physically there, the body is there, all the organs are there, but the person is not present, unfortunately. So the Beis Hamikdash being destroyed, we have a world, Hashem is giving life to the world, but he's not present in a revealed way. And page 384, from this alone, in other words, just this fact, there's no interferences to mitzvahs, but just from this alone is there in ganzen zu treisel kosses. But a Rebbe wants to emphasize something stronger. He says it in Yiddish, that's the language that we speak, that he's totally shaken and crushed to the core. What about a person who's a tzaddik? He's on a higher level, and he sees godliness. Godliness is revealed to him. Why would he be crushed from Golus? In fact, we find an interesting thing. The tzaddikim were the ones that were craving and yearning for Geula more than the regular people. Why? To them, godliness is revealed. You know the story with Reb Nachum Chernobyl, that somebody got up on a hill and he was blowing shofar. And all the people got excited. Somehow they were thinking, this must be Mashiach. Who's blowing shofar middle of the week, out of the blue? And they came running to their Rebbe, and they said to him, Someone's blowing shofar, Mashiach is here. So he walked over to the window. He stuck out his head. He sniffed the air, and he said, no, Mashiach is not here yet. In other words, by sniffing the air, he can tell the Mashiach is not here. So the Chassidim asked, why did he have to open the window, stick his head out the window? He could just sit on his chair, sniff the air, and say, Mashiach is not here yet. So they say the answer is because in his room, the air of Mashiach was already present. So he had to feel what's outside of his room. That's why he had to stick his head out the window. So these are tzaddikim who see godliness in an open way, and therefore, why would they be crushed? Even if he's on a very, very high level. Shemer es la gila lekus. The dugmas hagila shoy beis hamikdash. That godliness is revealed to him, just like it was in the times of the Beis Hamikdash. In fact, there's a source brings it down from a source in Kabbalah that Reb Shua Bar Yochai was one of those people. Even though he lived after the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, but in his personal life, in his personal perception and consciousness, godliness was revealed just like during the time of the Beis Hamikdash. Nevertheless, but being that the fact that out there in the rest of the world, godliness is concealed, muchach, that itself indicates that means that even the godliness that he experiences is still limited. Because if it would have been the true unlimited presence of Hashem, then there wouldn't be any place in the world that wouldn't feel his presence. When the real infinite light of Hashem shines, then it's every place. If there's even one place, even if it's in a pina nidachas, in a remote corner somewhere in the world, every place else is light is shining, but there's one place where it's still dark spiritually. It must be that even in the places where it's shining, it's a limited light that's shining. It's not really Hashem as he is in his essence. So this explains what the crushed is all about. How could you be crushed if it's a time of good and plenty? Everything's good and plenty. What are you crushed about? This is the answer. You're crushed just from the fact that there is Golus. This also explains what it is found in the Mamar of the Alter Rebbe, that it says in Tikkun Zohar, even if there would be one tzaddik in a generation that he would do tshuva on the highest level, in that generation, Mashiach would come. Why? Because page 386, I did tshuva shlema, through doing the absolute and the highest level of tshuva, mamshichim, you draw down this unlimited light Hashem. And if the unlimited light of Hashem shines in this world, this is unlimited means nothing can block it. It's everywhere. It's revealed in every part of the world. So again, the fact that the essence of Hashem's light is not shining, he's broken and crushed, and that's kasus. This is similar to what it says in Chassidus. The Hebrew word for illness, sick, is chola. Chola is spelled, as you see in the page, ches vav lamed hey, and the numerical value of that is 49. So it's brought down in Mamar. What is the significance that, I think that Arizal says it, what's the significance of the fact that the word chola is 49? And he said like this, because there are 50 gates of wisdom, bina. 49 means that someone who acquired all 49 gates of wisdom, but he still didn't get the 50th, he's chayla, he's just like a person, God forbid, becomes sick because he has a desire for something that he can't get. It can affect him physically, he becomes sick. So too, the Gemara says, this is unfortunately in a world of klippa. The Gemara says that there was a person that he got very attracted to this woman, and the woman was a married woman, and naturally, because she was a married woman, he could not be with her. But he had such a strong desire that he was getting sick from not being able to be with this woman. And they came to the rabbis and they say, listen, we change everything to save a person's life. So maybe this person should be allowed to get divorced and marry him. So of course, the rabbi said she doesn't have to do anything. It's his problem. He has to be able to control his Yetzer Hara. But here's a person that has such a desire and such a craving for something to the point that if he can't get it, he actually becomes sick. So therefore, by big tzaddikim, even if they have 49 gates of bina, but they're missing the 50th, that's already chayla. He already feels crushed. Okay, so now we understand that there are two levels in kassis. Yes, Ruth.
People who doesn't want to leave the government, like they feel so comfortable when they have so much money and like everything they need. So why should they want to leave?
Why should they want the Mashiach? So the truth is, if they don't understand this thing, they won't really get it completely. But you can even explain it to a person on another level, and that is that as good as when Mashiach comes, anything a person has now which is good is going to be, first of all, like I said before, I have everything that I need, but there's so many people out there that are suffering. Take one little walk through a hospital, and there's enough reason to ask for Mashiach. One hospital. Forget about what's going on in the entire world. So this is only in a scenario, even if the whole world was happy and everything was perfect and everything was good. But the truth is, on a personal level, if a person says, I have everything, then why do I need Mashiach? So again, that would mean that this person understands Yiddishkeit in a very superficial, external way. The Yiddishkeit is just the practical things, but they don't understand that Yiddishkeit is about my relationship with Hashem. Because if it's about that, they should realize that they don't have while they're in Golus. It's like I said before, it's like the person, it says Hashem is in Golus with us. He's also held hostage, so to speak, metaphorically speaking, that he's hidden from us and we can't feel him, we can't connect him, we don't feel his love, we don't feel within us our love for him. So therefore, the person who doesn't appreciate that means he understands Yiddishkeit on a more superficial level.
I don't have a question.
Yeah.
So it's clear that there always was a tzaddik who did complete tshuva in every generation, but Mashiach didn't come. So what does it mean that if we return totally to tshuva, Mashiach would come?
I had that question, of course. And probably a lot of people have that question, so I don't know the answer.
Okay.
But if anyone knows the answer, please bring it back to the class here. Right. Let me see if they write anything in the notes. No, they don't address that. Okay, so who do we know that has this kind of feeling? That they totally crush to the core just for the fact that we're in Golus, even if everything is okay. Even this is something which makes sense only for a very big tzaddik. Ordinary people don't feel, even though we learn about it, I'm explaining it myself, Halavai we would feel that kind of feeling that I'm crushed to the core because we're in Golus and Hashem is hidden from us. I mean, everyone feels some little percentage of something, but to say that we really feel that. So this seems to be something that applies only to tzaddikim. But in the next piece, the Rebbe is going to explain that in some way it applies to all of us. Where's that? Yedua, it's known, Mashekosav at Samach Tzedek. something that Tzemach Tzedek wrote. And this thing apparently is something so so fundamental that the Rebbe chose to put this into Hayom Yom as the last. We know that the first and the last of anything is something which sort of includes the whole Parsha, the whole Sefer. So the Rebbe put this in as the last Hayom Yom of the year. That the Tzemach Tzedek said that from time to time he would hear the Alter Rebbe say in Yiddish, Ich will say garnished, I don't want anything. I don't want your Gan Eden. I don't want your Olam Haba. All I want is you, yourself. Basically, we had that in the Mamar also. But if you translate that in different terms, it means I'm not satisfied by the fact that I have understanding of you and I love you and I have these feelings, but I don't really have your essence because you're hidden. And therefore, the Alter Rebbe would say those words, and meaning that he was crushed from the fact that we don't have Hashem's essence. So again, this is the Alter Rebbe. So the Rebbe says these words, being that we heard this from the Alter Rebbe, and it says the word Nishma means that not only the Alter Rebbe said this in selected times, but it was something very common. There was a time he would just be an outburst of emotion, and he would say in these words in Yiddish, like speaking to Hashem, Hashem, I'm not satisfied with this, I'm not satisfied with that. I'll only be satisfied if I have you yourself, which is basically the essence of Hashem, which will be revealed only in the times of the Geula. You know, when the Alter Rebbe was arrested, you probably remember the story that they said that the Alter Rebbe, how did they get the Alter Rebbe arrested? They submitted this accusation. The Alter Rebbe wants to take over the country, he wants to become the king. And therefore he's made an alliance with Turkey, and that's why he sends money to Israel, because he should send money to Israel for the Yidden to live there. So they said, he sends money to the Turkish government to build a stronger army to defeat Russia, and then he'll take over. A lot of other nonsense. One of the things they wrote was that Alter Rebbe had a certain condition, that the skin or the flesh of his nose would peel. And the doctor said that there's no physical explanation for this. The only way they can explain it is the way they explain it, that he has some sort of a desire for something that's unreachable. And that's why he has this. That means he wants to become the king. That also proves he wants to become the king. But what his desire that was unreachable was what it says here, that he wanted to connect to the essence of Hashem. So the Rebbe says, now that the Alter Rebbe said it, and now that the Tzemach Tzedek publicized it, and then the Rebbe went ahead and publicized it in Hayom Yom, that means that every Yid has the power that they can be that way to some extent. We have to explain this a little bit better. Tomorrow we won't be doing this Maimon. Tomorrow we have a special program. We'll be learning Basi Lagani. But Yirtzeh Hashem, after Shabbos, on Monday when we come back, we'll explain this a little bit more better and a little bit understand it more practically speaking. What does this mean? Because the Rebbe is basically applying this to everybody, that every Yid has this feeling, but we don't feel that consciously. So I want to explain that. Nether next time. Okay. Tzlocha Rabba, everybody. And again, thank you for the amazing teamwork. Everybody who did the calls, and teamwork, everybody who gave the money. It all added up to one big stuff.
Majeski. It's like the biggest fundraiser.
One of my sons, he's in Florida. So I guess you know some people though.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lisa.
It's a pleasure. Is class the same time? Or is it different?
Yeah, 8:30 we're starting.
Oh, here? Or,
Here,
okay.
I'll do my class most of the down here or paper verse.
Oh, great. Oh, 8:30? You raised, no, oh, that's a regular time. Okay.
You're losing.
I am always.